Right, terrifying. All right. Welcome to our world.
Good evening. Welcome to the regular meeting of the Town Council. Sorry for being late. We just finished a closed session. Actually, let's start by calling the roll.
Councilmember Hefty,
Sorry, that's me.
Councilmember Haskell. Here. Councilmember Taylor,
Somebody else.
Vice Mayor Warnikoff. Mayor Alves.
Here. Thank you. Okay. Our first item, well, our second item on the agenda is a closed session. I will report briefly out of closed session, no reportable actions taken. So, sorry. Thank you. Okay. Our third item then is we will begin by authorizing the interim contract with our town attorney. Howard, do you want to present this one?
Yeah, I could speak to it. Okay. Thank you, Mayor and council members. What we have before you is a contract to execute an agreement for legal services with Shute Mahaley and Weinberger for interim legal services, interim town attorney services. So I'm going to just provide a quick background. Since 2017, Cara Silver served as a town attorney who submitted her resignation on April 21st, effective May 22nd. And as a result, the town council held 2 closed session meetings to determine the next steps. One of the closed sessions that occurred were interviews with potential candidates. After the closed session, the town council chose to negotiate with Catherine Enberg of Shute Mahaley and Weinberger. Her bio I've attached in the part of the memo here is a link that the town council and the public can take a look at, extensive background. So she'll be serving as the interim town attorney for what we believe is the next 6 to 8 months. A couple of things to note on the staff in the staff report. There is a disclosure of a legal conflict concerning a current client of the firm related to a parcel in town. We wanted to point that out. And also number two, there is a transition period with the old firm, Jorgen Siegel, McCoy & Fuego, with Cara Silver, that I have executed an agreement on of $25,000, which is within my signing authority for a transition period with between the old firm and the new firm. So I've also listed the fiscal impact here, so you can see the current rates, which we've benefited for some low rates. We've had Jorgen Siegel. We had Cara Silva with the old firm, Jorgen Siegel, McCoy & Fuego for decades, since I've been here for 20 years and they've been here for 20 years. So those are the rates there. The new rates are listed here also. And as I understand, they are market rates, and Catherine can speak more to that if there are questions. But once again, this is an interim 6 to 8 month period. I mean, I can understand once we select the permanent and things are longer term, you can negotiate potentially better rates. These are just, I just want to let everyone know that these are interim rates. And I know that anyone that was going to come on board, for 6 to 8 months may charge different rates, not knowing how long they're going to be here. So once again, these are just an interim period. And that is my report. And I'm recommending, the staff is recommending execution of the agreement. And Catherine here is in the audience to help answer questions too on her rates. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Howard. Questions from the council? Catherine, do you want to say anything? Or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Should be live.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for that introduction, Howard, and it's really a pleasure to meet you all in person here. And I'm honored to be considered to serve as your interim town attorney. A little bit about myself. My law firm, Shoot Mahali and Weinberger, is about 40 attorneys. We're based in San Francisco. I've been with the firm since 2002, serving public agencies as well as community groups. That's one thing about our firm, is that we serve both types of clients as well as environmental organizations. For the past 6 years, I've served as city attorney for the city of Half Moon Bay, which I think has some parallels with Portola Valley. I've been very active in the San Mateo County City Attorney Group, which is a wonderful resource. And I look forward to the transition period as well. I've worked with Cara Silver on a number of projects actually in the past. So I think we're going to have a smooth transition. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have about myself or my proposed contract.
Any questions?
Just in case the public has questions, let's go over the conflict situation and the scope to the extent it's appropriate to do so.
Yeah, so whenever potential new matters or clients come into a law firm, we do conflict checks. And of course, we did that here when it was proposed that we might serve as interim town attorney. And one matter came up in the conflict check that is listed in the contract. And that relates, and it's not a project that I'm working on, but in the structure of a law firm, all of the conflicts of any of my law partners are imputed to me as to the firm. So we would be seeking a conflict waiver. And the proposal would be that my firm would not actually represent the town in connection with the application of the parcel that's listed in the, which I don't have memorized, which is listed in the contract. And my firm's current client, which is interested in that particular application, has also agreed to waive the conflict.
And so what that means for the town is we will have separate counsel for that matter representing the town, while your firm, not you, is adverse in that particular matter. But it's to do with a single parcel in town.
Correct, yes.
Thank you.
Other council questions for Catherine? Is there public comment on this particular item? We will do oral communications in a minute, but is there any public comment on this item? I see one hand on Zoom. Rita, go ahead.
Hi, thank you for taking my question. Since the town isn't privy to the other applicants that had law firms that put in for this interim position, can you tell us, the residents, why this group over another group? And the other question is that particular parcel in the housing element? Thank you.
Yeah, I can go through the process, and thank you, Rita. That's probably a good thing that we should have started with, which was Cara Silver had given us a list of knowledgeable and experienced counsel. A subcommittee of Mary Hufty and myself went through and interviewed. We reached out to approximately 11 of those. 7 responded, and we interviewed them. And we brought back 3 to meet with the full council. So we were comfortable with Shoot Mahali on a number of respects. One was they do work with Half Moon Bay, which has many parallels with challenges that this town is facing. They are local, and we thought there could be good synergies and experience to be drawn upon. Second, I think just interviewing Catherine about her approach, we felt very comfortable that she had a good sense of interacting with the council and the town attorney's role. And in regard of that one parcel, to my knowledge, it's not on the sites. It is a private residence that has something coming up that will eventually make its way to the ASCC in the ordinary course. So there's no specific relationship of that parcel to the housing element sites that we have been talking about for a while.
Thank you, Judith. Other public comments? I don't see any hands on Zoom. Anyone here in the room want to comment on this item? Okay. Seeing none, I'll close public comment and I will entertain discussion or a motion.
I mean, if there's no discussion, I would move that we accept the contract.
I would like to second.
Okay, is there any discussion? Okay, roll call vote then, please.
Councilmember Hufty,
Aye.
Councilmember Haskell,
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Wernicott,
Aye.
Mayor Alves,
Aye.
motion carries.
Okay, thank you. Catherine, welcome. Thank you. Please take your place at the dice.
Look forward to working with you.
Yes. Okay. Thank you for your patience. That brings us to item 4, oral communications. This is the time when you may address the council on an item not on tonight's agenda. Anyone wants to address us on an item not on the agenda, please raise your hand now. Carolyn Bertongen, go ahead.
Good evening, Council. I'm here tonight because I'm hoping that you can help us, that you can help not only the interim mayor, interim town manager, but also Public Works, Trails Committee, and PPS, because we have been trying to get these safe routes done, and especially the crossing by Woodside Priory. We're promised that the design would be ready in June, but last week the Trails Committee did not meet because there was no quorum. I hope that PPDS will meet. I know that some council members have been attending these meetings, especially the Trails Committee has done a great job. My problem is, so for a little history, we took 20,000 out the reserves to do the study. And that was in 2017. 2019, it became in front of the council. They approved it on the condition that the crossing by Woodside Priory would be removed or would be changed. We had a consultant. We put 285,000 in the budget, and we continue to see this consultant paid. I think the community wants to see results. And how are we going to be able to speed this up and help Public Works and the interim town manager accomplish this? We would like to have this before the new school year. There's another problem. Woodside Priory is planning construction, and there is some speculation they might be using Georgia Lane, and there is Saucil Trail to get to that site. We don't know for sure. And there is another property that is starting construction at the end of Georgia Lane. So how can we, so I'm asking town council to help us coordinate this and hopefully get it done before the new school year starts. Thank you.
Carolyn? Randy, go ahead.
Good evening, council, staff. Randy True, Alpine Road. Welcome, Catherine. I think some of my comments will be requests that may require your attention. The first is, there's several and they're mostly records related. The first is a request to have the emails that I sent to the town council alias at the end of April be included in the public comment record for the last meeting. There were some additional public comments I think that were included. I scanned through those again today and didn't see mine, and I specifically requested in those emails that they be included along with the whole threads. And those emails I think were important information related to communications with the Woodside Fire District. First was January 4th letter, which has been included, and the second was communications with a senior Woodside fire official related to statements that they were asked to withdraw their objection or it would tank the housing element. So these are important communications that I want to just make sure they get included in the record. And with that, with last 2 weeks ago's town council meeting. The second request is related to the public records act request that I submitted on May 6th. And that was for all correspondence and records of correspondence between the town council staff and any representatives of the Woodside Fire Protection District. I think it's past the time and I haven't heard a response on that, or I think even an acknowledgement of receipt, but I appreciate if that was fulfilled expeditiously. The third is related to the attachment 1 exhibit that was amended and then approved at the last town council meeting. It has a statement in the clause starting with first that says that he and other representatives of the district have since repeatedly reaffirmed since then to town staff, both orally and in writing, that the draft letter does not accurately reflect the views of either Mr. Bullard or the district. I am not aware of anything in the record or elsewhere stating in writing that there any evidence of any of that substantiation of that statement in writing. So I'd like to be provided that statement in writing, and if it's not available, if it's not doesn't exist, I'd like the exhibit to be amended, please. So these are related to important communications with our fire district. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I see one hand on Zoom. Rita Combs, go ahead.
Hi, thank you for taking my question. In the past 2 years, residents and outside agencies have been asked to be held to certain dates in responding to the town for things like safety element, Stanford Wedge, which was, I believe, May 13th, 2022. And I can't remember the date for the safety element and other things. We've been asked to make statements and put it into the file, questions or whatnot, research. And, you know, and those dates are passed and those things haven't been talked about since. How can we, the residents, get acknowledgement of knowing that the statements and the statements of the agencies are being followed up on? And I understand that you know, the town is short-staffed, but some of these things are well over a year old, and you know, and the residents have been asking for updates, and there's no response. And I know that when these deadlines came up, there was a lot of pressure to make sure you get it in by the deadline. So if, I know people have been asking and there hasn't been an answer, but, and I know you can't answer this question now, but we have to do something about communications and the feeling that, it would probably save a lot of time, people making oral statements, save a lot of time during these meetings if the residents could get responses from these type of questions. Thank you.
Thank you. I see no other, oh, Christy Corley, go ahead.
Thank you. Just a few items. You asked for our input on the sheriff contract, and I'm not seeing the list of the public input anywhere. Is there some way we can look at the public input on that contract? On the consent agenda, I'm interested in pulling 5B so we can learn about what is the land econ group and what that money was spent on. I've also submitted letters hoping that it would be listed, and the letters do not show up in the meetings. So I've submitted one letter 3 times and it's still not showing up at a council as if I've written a letter. So I don't know where these letters are going, but we used to just send them and they would be posted. So I think we need a process here that works. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Dana Breen, go ahead.
Hi, you guys. I had a brainstorm last night and I actually wrote to Judith Haskell about it. I think if we are short-staffed and the town needs help, that we should ask the people to come and help. And I thought it would be really great to have an internship program this summer for neighborhood kids, a teenager, to actually come in and answer the phone and give messages as needed, or say, their town hall is very crowded right now. It's going to take 2 weeks for X, Y, or Z to get back to you. Then I walked with a bunch of people today and they all said, we'd come answer the phone for 4 hours. So, we have this great history of volunteerism. Let's ask the residents to help. Anyway, that's just, I think that would be a really cool idea. So think about it. Thanks.
Thank you, Dana. Okay, I see no other hands on public on Zoom, so close public comment.
Could I ask, could you just turn the volume down just a little bit more? It's still pretty loud.
Next up is the consent agenda. Public may comment on any item on the consent agenda. Council members may elect to pull items as needed. Is there any public comment on the consent agenda? You can raise your hand here or on Zoom.
Does my request for addition of the public comment affect the minutes or not for the last meeting?
Sorry, what do you mean?
The request that the public comments be updated for the last meeting, is that doesn't affect the minutes, does it?
No. Okay. Christy Corley, go ahead.
Oh, thank you. I would like to pull 5B. I want to learn about the land econ group and how that money was spent. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other public comment on the consent agenda? I don't see any hands here or on Zoom, so move on. Does any council member wish to pull an item off of consent?
I want to pull the minutes for May 10th.
Minutes for May 10th. Anything else one wants to pull?
Let me
Oh.
just figure out which, I don't know if it was May 10th or May
Oh,
11th
it's,
for me.
it's
What's the-
5A1. Sorry, I didn't reference it correctly.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the one I also wanted to pull.
Okay. Anything else anyone wants to pull Okay, with that, with item 5A1 pulled, I will entertain a motion to approve the rest of consent.
I'll make a motion to approve the remaining items.
Second.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Hufty,
Aye.
Councilmember Haskell,
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Warnikoff,
Aye.
Mayor Alves.
Aye.
Motion carries.
So 5A1, the minutes from the the May 10th regular meeting.
I believe on item 5 in the first sentence, it mentions Councilmember Haskell recusing, and I believe that was Councilmember Hufty.
That was my fix.
And then on the following page, again, at that, so we're on page 16 at the top now. It says Councilmember, this is about the motion. I believe it says Councilmember Taylor made a motion seconded by Haskell to amend with Exhibit D. I believe that was me. Member Warnikoff. And then it goes on to say that it was approved unanimously and it was not. Councilmember Haskell abstained and Councilmember Hufty was recused. And I believe
There's one more, which is ministerial ASCC on page 14, not AASC. And I don't know whether the unanimous counts or not. But it should be recorded about the abstention and the recusal.
Agreed. Okay. Any other corrections in the minute? Okay, with those amendments, are we making a motion to approve the amended minute?
So moved.
second.
Roll call vote.
Councilmember Hufty,
Aye.
Councilmember Haskell,
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Warnikoff,
Aye.
Mayor Alves.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Okay, that brings us to item 6A on the regular agenda, the interim contract with the sheriff.
Yeah, thank you. And I believe Mark Myers is on the Zoom
Mark.
also.
I'm here, sir.
So I'm gonna provide a brief background on the extension. The Town Council held a closed study session at its April 26th meeting and asked staff to bring back sheriff's extension contract for 3 months due to the substantial cost increase. So let me provide a little bit more background, but the recommendation that we have forth in the memo is the contract extension amendment 1 that that the sheriff's assembled with us, essentially extending it for 3 months because the current contract ends June 30th. It was a 5-year contract, so July, August, and to the end of September. So I'm going to go through the schedule too, concerning when we need a permanent contract. So as background for the council and the public, the San Mateo County Sheriff's has been providing law enforcement services in the town since even before its incorporation in 1964. Typically, we have 3 or 5-year terms so far. I've included the current contract in the packet. In early 2022, the County Council appointed Mayor Alves and Vice Mayor Warnikoff to serve as the Sheriff's Contract Subcommittee. So discussion started in April of 2023. So during the study session at its April 26th meeting, we were presented with the potential new contract, and it turned out that there was approximate increase of $852,000 due to cost of living and potential pass down operational costs that were not considered by the sheriffs. Essentially, they're looking for a full cost recoup. So as a result of that, kind of a shock, the town needs some time to determine fiscally how we are going to come up with the budget to enter into some type of contract with the sheriff department or what to do next. And I think at the time the county council indicated to bring back, and the only path probably is to extend the existing contract for 3 months. And the sheriffs were willing to do that. And that's what we have before you. In fact, the sheriff indicated that they would extend the contract for 3 months with our current rates, which results in a savings of about $213,000 for those 3 months. So I'll get into a discussion here. So that's it for pretty much the contract extension. It's pretty straightforward. It's essentially the old rates, old scope. Everything's old scope, and all we're doing is extending for 3 months until we have time to talk about the permanent contract. For the permanent contract, the sheriff indicated that there is a timeline. We don't have the full 3 months because a permanent contracts take times to talk about. And I've outlined kind of what's on the road forward in future meetings, potential meetings, what the future schedule looks like. But the sheriff's department indicated to me that it takes 6 to 8 weeks for them to get to their board of supervisors to approve a contract. So if we're working back from the end of September, that means we have to have something in place or to them by the end of July. And at this point, we have a canceled meeting at the end of July. So even working backwards, we're going to have a meeting June 14th and June 12th. We're going to have to provide some kind of final contract to the sheriff.
July.
July 12th, to finalize the contract. So that is my report. But the most important thing right now is to get a contract extension with the same scope. And Mark Myers here is here to answer any questions concerning that. But once again, the timeline is going to be very important. In the amendment, we have to at least let them know by June 15th if we're going to continue with services with them or not. So once we approve the contract, then I will tomorrow, the next couple of days, reach out to the sheriffs and indicate our intention to continue services. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Howard. Council questions for Howard or Captain Myers?
Yeah, I have one. The June 15th, letting them know of our desire to have them continue to provide law enforcement services. What's the ramification of that? Like, yes, we can indicate it, but we still have a negotiation to go through. So I'm a little confused how to think about that.
But I asked them that too. The June 15th is so that they can internally prepare their internal workings, because getting things ready with the Board of Supervisors takes talking to their county council, their county executives, the sheriff's contract staff, the sheriff herself. So they want to be at least notified by June 15th that they're going to have to do all those things. So they can provide the proper staff and schedule to get their things done internally.
So it's really that we indicate an interest in continuing, and then it's their obligation to do those things internally to line it up to happen. Because, if I read this technically, it kind of says that the obligation's on us. There's no statement of, and then they have to go through their process. And I don't need to change it. I just want to make sure I understand the implication.
Understood. No, the obligation is on us to let them know so they can plan their work schedule.
But to follow up on that, if I understand this, we need to be done negotiating by 15. This isn't just,
No, I don't think so.
okay, so so this is the part I don't understand. If it takes 6 to 8 weeks to get this through council and to the board, this can't be changing as it's moving. So when do we finish negotiating? Because that's the real, in terms of our scheduling timeline, right?
So the June 15th is just to let them know that we want to continue the services. And then after that, we can keep working all the way up till July 12th, because we cancel the meeting at the end of July.
Okay, so, but the July 12th is the time when we have to have
A final.
our final contract.
Essentially, based on the way the calendar is working right now, because of their 6 to 8 week window, it pushes us into late July. Our last meeting that we have scheduled right now is July 12th. So in reality, that's our date.
Yeah.
The only other meeting we have between then and now is July 14th, or June 14th. So June 14th will become the next study session with the goal of approval on July 12th. So it feels, it says 3 months, but it really doesn't feel like 3 months, in other words.
I think the way I would practically look at it, and tell me if this is right or wrong, is if we don't want to work with them, then they're not going to take any action if we don't notify them. Like, in other words, June 15th is an indication of interest in proceeding, and they have to line up their resources to support that. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Mary, do you have any questions?
Is there another game in town?
At this short of notice, I think when you're looking at other alternatives, it's gonna take a year to even solicit and find out what things are going on. At this point, I don't think there is. But with this time frame, if you want services for the next three months and then also for the year, I think if you want to honestly look at other alternatives, it's going to take some time.
You could look at the service level.
We can look at service, but right. We can,
Yeah, we can. Yeah, it would be very hard to find. Other council questions for Howard or for Captain Myers? Captain Myers, did you want to say anything in addition to this? I meant to ask you before.
No, sir, I was just trying to get that one date from my fiscal boss on when we would need that, like the date in July that we would have to have the contract in hand, then to present it up to our board of supervisors to get signed. So I'm trying to get that hard date for you guys right now.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, if there's no other council questions, then I will take public comment on this item. I see one hand up on Zoom. David Cardinal, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. I'm kind of a bit confused. I think the sheriff's department provides all our police protection, and we're pretty interested in safety. And they've just offered us a 3-month extension on a very sweetheart deal. And now there's some discussion about whether we should, I don't know, go hire our own police force or do something insane. You know, I don't get it. So I'm all on board for, yes, I mean, there are guys and gals, and if you don't like their prices, I'm just confused about what people think they're going to accomplish by wailing and gnashing of teeth over the extension. So thanks.
Thanks, David. Carolyn, go ahead.
Thank you. I hope that the community can have some involvement. You know, we've dealt with these law enforcement agents, and we have several questions. There was suggestion to give a show and tell. No, we don't need a show and tell. We need answers. And I'm pretty mad about this. I hope you guys will look at Exhibit A, the services. We have not gotten them. And every time that somebody leaves, they were praised, and we, the community members, had no recourse of saying anything. And then we also felt kind of silenced. Why would we say something if all the town council members praise law enforcement? No, we're not happy. There's several questions, and I hope that we, the community, can participate in the negotiations, and definitely don't have an automatic 3-year renewal. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments on this? I don't see any other hands up. So I'll bring it back for discussion.
Yeah, I mean, based on what I'm seeing, I don't I didn't perceive any gnashing of teeth over it. We were just clarifying where we are and what the future decision points are. To me, it makes sense to do the extension. It's a pretty simple analysis from my perspective. We're continuing the services as they are, and then in the subsequent negotiation, we'll be able to look at those items. So I'm comfortable with proceeding.
Same.
Me too.
Okay, with that in mind, I'll take a motion on this extension for 3 months.
Motion to extend.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Hefty,
Aye.
Councilmember Haskell,
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Warnikoff,
Yes.
Mayor Alves.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. So then we'll move on to the study session and Q&A with the sheriff's office.
Yes,
Public Q&A.
yes, the next step would be working with Captain Mark Myers on a Q&A session, most likely in the community hall, very similar to the sheriff's gathering that we had last month, to invite the public to ask questions concerning the contract. So that's probably scheduled. It's going to be scheduled before the June 14th meeting, most likely in the evening. We're looking at, I think it was the 12th or the 13th, evening of the 12th or the 13th. But we'll solidify that with Mark Meyer and then also then push the promotion out to the public.
Good. Thanks. Okay.
Question on that, is it gonna be, can we do it as with Zoom attendance?
Not in the community hall, but I think if if you want to do that, then we'll have to look into the school, doing it at the school.
Yeah, I mean, I think, we could do that on Zoom, and like, it would be, we're good at it, and we get to see more people, and
Why don't we see if it's, I mean.
we can fit quite a few people in here.
Yeah, okay. We'll see, unless some kind of logistics or technical requirements require us, I think we can have.
Okay, that moves us to item 6B, which is the Housing Element Annual Report, and this will be Laura Russell. Laura, go ahead.
Hi, thank you. Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. We have for you our Housing Element Annual Report for the calendar year 2020. Okay, I hope that looks okay for everybody. So this is an annual activity that we do every year for the previous calendar year. And since we've been talking about the new housing element, I wanted to take a second and just make sure everyone's comfortable and familiar with the process. So the town is required to submit an annual report to HCD every year on housing element implementation. So this is where we provide our update to them on how the progress is going on our RHNA allocation, as well as on our programs. Under state law, the council is required to consider this report at a public meeting at an opportunity for the public to provide comments. So the council just receives the report, so you don't have to take any action. I wanted to point out that the format is set by HCD. So the tables that we're required to use are established by them. We cannot change them. So I know that they are difficult and cumbersome, but it is what we're stuck with. And in addition, during this last 8-year planning cycle, HCD changed the format of the report in response to a law that changed. So that also led to some confusion. So if some of you have been in and out of this topic, you might have seen 2 different forms and 2 different ways that we've reported over the years. So this is an opportunity for the council and the public to ask questions. If the council would like to see any changes to the report, we can also receive that direction. And this is the last report that we're providing to HCD on the 5th cycle housing element. And as a reminder, that covers the years 2015 to 2022. So this table is directly out of the staff report. It talks about the RENA progress for calendar year 2022 and the total units to date. So in 2022, we had 6 ADUs that were net new ADUs where a building permit was issued. So this number turned out to be a fair amount lower than what we expected based on how things were going mid-year. We also had 2 net new single-family homes. So a total of 8 housing units were added in calendar year 2022. So in case you're new to these tables, I'll just walk you through briefly. On the far left side are the income categories. These are the same ones that we typically use when we're talking about affordable housing and housing elements. Then the next category is, the next column is the RENA allocation. For that period that we were in, our number was 64, allocated as shown here. And then the units that we built in 2022 are allocated according to our formula, with 3 units in the very low, 1 in the low, 1 in the moderate, and 3 in the above moderate. And then next is our total units to date. So you can see, very importantly, the bottom number is 108 net new housing units that were added during the 8-year planning cycle. So this does far exceed the 64 RENA allocation that the town received. I am often asked if we can carry these units over into the next housing cycle. And the answer to that, unfortunately, is no. The clock always restarts. And then finally, in the last column, you can see our remaining RENA. And technically, we are short 6 low-income units. This is actually because of the way that our ADUs have been allocated. So if you were part of the housing element update process, you know that this is a tricky part of how our housing elements are created and how they are implemented. So I wanted to point out what is really the most important aspect of the key part of the report that we provide to HCD. And that's the yellow section of this main table that's in the middle, because these are the building permits that were issued during the year. So these are the ones that technically count. They also ask us to keep track of planning entitlements, things that are approved in the planning process, as well as things that received their certificate of occupancy or final inspection. But this is the category where we are required to keep track and report back. These green boxes don't mean anything. They are just silly green boxes because the HCD report doesn't work very well. So try not to use too much logic when looking at HCD reports. So what our team does is we look at the units that were constructed. So we've got the 6 ADUs and the 2 single family homes. And then we allocate those into the different income categories. In this case, this year, all of our units were non-deed restricted. That's usually the case for us. Every once in a while, we might have deed restricted units over the past 8 years, but that's quite uncommon. Moving into the future, we expect to have more deed restricted units. So you can see that these are allocated in the same categories as we saw in the previous table, along with the date that the building permit was issued. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about the ADU allocation formula, because this has been a big topic for the community as we're now going into implementing a new housing element. So this is just an example, okay? And I wanted to do something with easy math for all of us that are not as great at the math. So in the 5th cycle, this is the time period that we just completed at the end of 2022. The town has been using an allocation formula that provides for very low income units 55%, low income 10%, moderate income 15%, and above moderate 20%. So in our hypothetical example of 10 ADUs produced, this is the resulting ADUs, right? So 5.5, 1, 1.5, and 2. Obviously, there would have to be some rounding when our numbers are so small. So this allocation formula in the 5th cycle was started, the town started to use it in 2015. And I've been often asked, why? And unfortunately, the answer is we don't know for sure. We looked up all the records. I did extensive research on this. I contacted the previous planning director. We were trying to search out exactly how this allocation came into play at that time. Our best understanding is that there was new local guidance that was circulating, and the town took that guidance and made adjustments to try to make it what they considered to be at the time more conservative. So we, the current staff, have stuck with that formula. So in the last few years that I have been here, we have been using that formula. So the town has been using the same formula since 2015, as far as we can see in the records. This has passed muster with HCD during this time period. As you know, the scrutiny has not been as high. Then I wanted to compare that to the housing element allocation that we have been talking about and what's included in our new adopted housing element. So again, including the example with 10 ADUs. We're using what we've been referring to as the 30-30-30-10 split. So this is very different than what the town used for the 5th cycle. So in this case, using the 30-30-30-10 split, you can see that the resulting ADUs are then distributed, and in particular, there is more low-income units. So when we looked at the previous table over here, and we were short on low-income units, there's a direct correlation to the allocation formula that was being used. And so that's why we have 6 remaining units that officially were not satisfied in the low-income category because of that allocation formula. So it will be different moving forward. The new housing element has this 30-30-30-10 split, which we're referring to as a safe harbor. It's a commonly accepted basic assumption with HCD and with other communities. So then that leaves the question, what happens next? How can we compare? How can we understand this in context? So hopefully this is helpful. In the 5th cycle that we just completed, we know that many of those units are not actually being rented. So this is kind of something that was discussed quite a bit with the Ad Hoc Housing Element Committee. Many members of the public have talked about this. And when the ADU ambassadors did their survey, they also found that while there are ADUs being rented, proportionally, they're probably lower than what the town has reported to HCD in the past. The town was allowed to use that allocation. We were not flagged by HCD. We didn't receive any kind of criticism. So it was our intention to just keep with that methodology that the town had been using for multiple years. And of course, the scrutiny in the 5th cycle was much lower than as we're going into implementation of the 6th cycle. So now we're looking at our recently adopted housing element we call the 6th cycle. We know that there's going to be more accountability. We don't know exactly what form that's going to take. It could be in new laws, it could be in HCD enforcement, but there's pretty clear indications that that's going to be the case. We will have to track ADUs. Sorry if I flip the letters, I think on something, I might have a typo there. We will have to track ADUs going forward. So that's an expectation that most communities have now. So we're actually going to need to do surveys. We're going to need to keep track of how many units are getting rented. So this is a big change. And we do expect that during the 8-year planning period, we will have to adjust that allocation. We don't expect that we'll be able to stick with that 30-30-30-10 split throughout the 8-year planning period, the way we've been able to with the 5th cycle. So I wanted to provide a little bit of context and hopefully explain a little bit, because I know it's hard to finish one time period and be moving into the next one. So that completes my presentation. As you all know, the programs are also outlined in the staff report, but I think those are relatively self-explanatory. It's just wrapping up what we've completed in those areas. So I'd be happy to try to answer any questions.
Thank you, Laura. Are there questions from the council for Laura? None from the council. Mary?
Well, the question is always, is there, when do we get checked on whether we're providing low and very low and medium housing? I mean, when, is there a check that happens? Does anybody go around and say, how much are we charging for these houses? What's the rental?
In the past, there has not been a formal check. So HCD has not required us to verify that the ADUs are actually being rented or at what rent they're being offered to people. So we don't know if our assumptions in our allocation are true or not. So in the future, in the sixth cycle, in the next few years, we will have to survey people and we will have to, the best of our ability, keep track and be accountable for that.
Other questions from the council? Public comment on this item. I see one hand on Zoom. David Cardinal, go ahead.
No, thanks. It's pretty easy to pat ourselves on the back for technically overachieving on paper for the RENA 5 housing cycle. But if you actually look at the US Census data from the American Community Survey, we have less rental units available than we did 7 years ago. And we have way less, hugely less affordable rental units than we did before. So yeah, we got an A+ on paper, but we didn't actually do anything. Our new ADUs, whatever happened to them, they're not increasing the housing stock. So as Laura pointed out, we did get away with it, if you will. But if the goal is simply to get a passing grade next time and not to actually provide housing, it's going to be tougher because we'll actually have to deliver and there'll be some audits. So I suppose everybody probably needs to kind of own up to whether they believe we actually want to provide affordable housing or simply pass muster the next time that the teacher comes by and checks our paperwork. It will be a major challenge either way. So I think counting on the fact that we did well last time on paper is not something that we can count on in the future, or maybe we should count on it. I'd like to see us actually think about what it means to provide real affordable housing for actual humans. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Patty Dews has her hand up. Patty, go ahead.
Hi, hey Laura, I have a quick question, and if it's too weird, you and I can take it offline. But I noticed on the schedule for the ADUs that all of the building permits were issued in 2022, the last year of cycle 5, which I find rather odd. But does that mean that HCD was not monitoring us through the process? Because one of the things we've already talked about is we will have to make progress reports and show that we are making progress towards the commitment that we have, or else we have to come up with alternative plans to get there. So is that something new that HCD is going to do in the next cycle? Did they not do it in cycle 5? Is the fact that they were all issued in 2022 just kind of a weird coincidence? Anyway, it just kind of confused me. So again, you and I can take this offline. Not something, if it's not important to the council to answer, but just clarification. Thanks, bye.
Laura, I think there's a quick answer to that question. Do you want to take it real quick?
Yeah, this report is just for calendar year 2022. It's not like a closure report for the whole 8-year cycle. There is not a requirement to do that kind of 8-year reporting. We just do one report each year for the previous calendar year.
Thank you. I see no other hands up on Zoom. Carolyn's got her hand up here. Go ahead, Carolyn.
Thank you. This question is for Laura. Many residents have asked the planning department to be a little more lenient for those residents who waited until 23 to build their ADUs. Do we see any progress? I know there was a survey, there was a subcommittee doing the help, and we have not seen anything. So we were among the ones who wanted to reform or change the unit into an ADU, but we specifically waited because we knew they were not counted to the 5th cycle. And then perhaps for council, if ACD just says these extra units don't count, is there no legal requirement that we can, do they have not to respond with a legal definition why that cannot count? If it's all about housing, don't you think that should be incorporated, and we should at least ask them if it cannot count? I mean, yes, I know Laura has asked it several times, but I think there might be more a formal answer required from ACD. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Christy Corley has raised her hand on Zoom. Christy, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for the report. I have a question about the new housing laws coming July 1st and how that will affect the residents, affect housing, and any decisions that you'll be making as of July 1st. So these are previous laws. Can you describe to the residents that law or laws? And in the future, would we be using any SB 9 parcel split? Well, SB 9 allows a lot to be split by a resident. But we did not use them in our housing element. Although we have one so far, do we have any more than one? And couldn't we extrapolate that out? If we have one in the first quarter of 2023, could we assume that we would at least get 2 a year? So that would be 16, correct? 2 times 8 years. So we could get 16 SB9 lot splits based on history now, correct? So those are my 2 questions. And then do you plan on starting the Sunrise Committee? That's my 3rd question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Christy, I'm going to suggest you ask those questions offline because none of those pertain to the actual item on the agenda tonight, which is the annual report for 2022. You're welcome to ask any of us offline. So I'd be happy to discuss that some other time. Thank you. Any further discussion? Is there any updates people would make? Okay. Okay. Laura, I don't think you need any more input from us. Is that correct? So this was just a review and an approval.
No, as long as the council doesn't have any comments, we would proceed with submitting the report to HC.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Great report.
Okay. Thanks, Laura.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. That brings us to item 7A, which is regional and council liaison reports. Anyone want to pull anything?
I have a question, and I'm not sure it needs to be pulled, but this is the first time I've seen the detailed minutes of the committee operations subcommittee update. And maybe my question relates to when will we as a council ballpark be seeing the proposal? Because I have a series of questions since I've been out of the loop and it's not been agenda, so it's not tonight, but what's the ballpark and the process?
Well, our next meeting is May 31st with the group. They're going to come back. The subcommittee's meeting with the committee of committee chairs. And then we'd like, depending on how that goes, that would be the best time, Craig, correct me if you disagree, to come back, which would put it at the June 14th council meeting. But it did occur to me that in the previous council, before we did written reports, subcommittees routinely gave, when we did council liaison reports verbally, we also always gave subcommittee reports. And I think there's been so much going on. I haven't really focused on that. And so that's the only reason why, now that I've been able to lift my head off from the very, very busy period that we had, it occurred to me that I should also be, and we should also be doing our subcommittee updates as well at this time. That's why you're seeing this
So-
right now.
I get it, and that's good to know because I haven't been.
We haven't been,
including
it hasn't been a
anything, right?
practice. It hasn't been a practice. It's
But-
kind of fell on the wayside.
So, but because of the Brown Act and noticing and working through a subcommittee, we almost don't want to have a fulsome discussion, right? We just look at this and say, thank you.
For tonight, it's
Yeah.
just, it's not an agenda item. It's an update. And so what we used to
Okay.
do, like, for instance, when we'd have the ad hoc housing element committee, Jeff and I were, the subcommittee
Mm-hmm.
for that. We would give like a 2 to 3 minute verbal update about what we've been doing, just to keep people in the loop. But it's not a discussion of the agenda items.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I mean, it's agendized.
Okay, as long as there's a future session at which
Definitely. has
all
to come
these
back to council.
questions, comments, because what I don't want to do is surprise people by having questions, right? And if it.
This is going
Yeah.
to be a very long process.
Yeah, okay.
And I think 2020
That's fine.
hindsight, I wish, well, first of all, I think it's just nice for us right now to kind of, I don't know, Jeff, if you want to chime in on how we used to always give subcommittee, just kind of the verbal
Yeah.
updates quickly. But now with, also, where are we in terms of written versus verbal? Because I know, I love the idea, but I know it's hard for everybody to get to.
Idea of, sorry.
Written reports in general.
Oh,
At this point, for the liaison reports and
Right.
subcommittee reports.
No, I mean, what do you guys think? Are you asking me like over?
Well,
I'm
I
sure
I
you're
guess I'm conflating two things. So did I answer your question about
Yes.
the why
Yes,
for
you can
for right
move on
now?
from that specific.
Right. And then I think through this discussion, it kind of came up, well, in the past before, like literally up until this council,
Yeah.
all of the reports were verbal. You had done a colleague's memo requesting that they be written. I know not everybody has always had the time to do that. Do we want to do that or not? And I'm fine with either. I personally will say I like it because I think it's nice to have a record.
Yeah.
And I think it's faster, frankly.
That was the goal. Yeah, the goal was to be faster, but also to have the written, actually have something in writing. I apologize because I'm behind that. I mean, I actually think this works fairly well. in terms of-
The only logistical problem I have, and it's not a problem, it's just a conundrum for me, is I attended ASCC on Monday and it will be stale. And there, the preview is there was nothing major that went on, but if there had been, I would definitely want to bring it up sooner rather than later. So if we can have some flexibility to say, hey, here's a verbal preview.
Right.
I'm flexible on how we.
I think we've done that. I mean, I think
Yeah.
people have done that before,
Exactly,
And I think
yeah.
that's, I mean, I think that's fine.
Yeah.
And I think as long as we're not actually discussing or deciding something, as long as it's just kind of, here's something, like if it's Monday and you say, here's what happened on Monday, and here's something to
Yeah.
think about. It's just, you're bookmarking something, and then maybe we say, okay, maybe that should be something that comes back to us as a formal.
Mhm.
I think that's fine, and that was actually part of my intention with this, is also just say, okay,
Okay.
if there's something you actually want to, like raise beyond just having the report in writing for the public record, just
Okay.
say, okay, here's my report, here's the one thing I want you to know about it. It's maybe we come back and maybe that's the prelude to the kind of college
Mhm,
memo or something.
mhm,
So,
mhm.
yeah, I think, and if you wanted to weigh in on Monday's thing, just say this happened on Monday as an
Yeah.
information item. I think that's good.
So, for example, the conservation committee met yesterday.
Okay. Okay.
And, yeah, I mean, I could have written it out, but then it would have gone into the next one, and then it wouldn't have been as relevant to the
Agreed.
questions that
Oh, yeah,
you
yeah.
were raising.
Yeah.
Do you want me to report on that?
Sure. I mean, I was trying to kind of set a bar where it wasn't like, I mean, sometimes certain former council members would read every single report.
Yeah, I'm
you
not
know,
gonna do
at
that.
length. No, so I mean, I'm just, this was sort of a way of just saying, okay, you don't have to tell us everything you did this week, but just tell us the highlights. So if that's something you want to share with us, please. But if you want to do that.
Well, I mean, and it's tricky. Again, it's tricky how you present it. So writing it down is much preferred because you actually can get some time to think about it, get it right. So I love the writing it out, and I share your problem with the conservation, but I thought it was particularly interesting in the conservation setting. They're doing a terrific job, of course, and they're actively working with the fire department with the subcommittee, with the subcommittee, helping with communication and helping to facilitate the sensitivity to the environment for our projected interventions for fire resilience. So it's kind of a nice model, and I think it works really well. We've got some, and then the subcommittee will bring it back to the committee, and when the ordinance is fleshed out, and then we'll be able to discuss. Well, it seems like a good model, and I think that all of our work and our thinking about this had helped try to help them. And then I could just say that that's fine. That's the I mean, it seems like there have been a lot of meetings. Who's the liaison for it?
For the next 2 months.
The planning commission. I was at the liaison for the planning commission and I didn't do it. Didn't do the written. I will do it.
And
It was
I
very
missed a couple
interesting.
meetings myself, and it's just, sometimes I circle back with the committee chair or the commission.
Yeah,
chair,
and
just-
I've always done the talking to the chair before and after.
And there are minutes for all those meetings. I mean, they all publish their minutes later, so there's a record of what happened. And it's just, this was sort of a chance, this is just sort of a chance for us, if you wanted to council to know about something that happened.
Yeah.
in a meeting, this is the forum for that. And so even if you don't have a written report, you can bring it up.
Yeah.
A brief report on the SEC. 3 Hillbrook is a property that the new members of the ASCC and the current ASCC were able to walk the property and review. So we have a full ASCC now, which is lovely to see. The property has some unique terrain issues, and essentially they want to use the full floor area for the main building, but because of the terrain challenge and because of the way they were massing it, they were pretty comfortable with it. There's some trees that need to be removed. And along Alpine, there is a question on a fence because that property does have abuts Alpine and is in that scenic corridor. And there's an ancient 1930s, if you have to look to see it, an old metal fence. Essentially that will be replaced eventually, as part of the project. And they were discussing the type and form, because it technically shouldn't be there, but there's a safety issue.
Yes.
So anyway, it was nice to see the full ASCC.
Yeah. Anybody else want to phone? Public comment on the.
Can I make one comment before, and I apologize if I'm beating a dead horse, but we're in agreement, we're going to continue with the written reports. If you're off cycle, you give a verbal report. Even if you have a written report, you can also highlight verbally. And then we'll also resume subcommittee reporting ad hoc. No, that would be written. Or either or, I guess, but I think it's nice if it can be written, use the same approach, no?
I think Mary's concern is the subcommittees meet more frequently, and that's going to start being a burden, and I tend to agree with that.
That's why I said
So
ad hoc.
periodic would be fine.
Not every time
I'd
you
say-
meet, absolutely not.
Yeah.
It's like a status report.
You can report, like, if you're ready to tell us something. you can make a project.
Okay.
So for instance,
I mean, the only thing I'd say is, I mean, we're going to meet with staff. Right, I mean, been working on the code,
About-
we've been working, we've been working on the code of ethics.
Oh, okay.
So I think we've got something, that we like, would like to pass it by the new attorney, and then our goal would be to share it with staff and then bring it to the council.
Okay. Public comment on the liaison reports. David Cardinal, go ahead.
Hi, just a really simple comment. None of us can hear you on Zoom when you chatter with each other.
Yeah, we gotta do this.
So for the last
Sorry,
15
we've been leaning
minutes,
back.
Yeah, you're looking at each other, you're leaning back, people are pushing their microphones aside. Okay by me, if that's okay by you, but it's not, you're not getting the word out. Thank you.
Thank you for the reminder. Mary Jack, go ahead.
Hi, I just want to second the thought. I want to hear every word you're saying, and I have my closed caption on, but it's not always accurate. So I know it's a hassle, but if you could just lean into your microphone when you're speaking, I'd really appreciate it. I'm sorry I can't be there in person tonight, but I care about what you're saying. I want to hear every word. Thank you.
Thank you.
I wonder if it'd be worth using headsets. Or at least, like, I have a little thing goes around your neck. You put
I mean, we could use lapel mics.
lapel mics, yeah.
I mean, if we really wanted to go there.
We can look into it. I guess I might.
A lapel mic would be great.
Yeah.
This is ridiculous.
But I mean, I think we need to figure out what tech we have. So
Yeah.
it's probably worth looking into,
Okay.
but I'm not ready to commit to it. yet.
It seems to me this is probably more expensive.
This or the lapel mic?
Well, I guarantee mics are more expensive because we already paid for this.
Yeah.
All right. In the meantime, well, yeah, we'll look at it. But in the meantime, we'll just talk into the mics. Okay. Rita Combs, go ahead.
Yes, thank you for the previous speakers bringing up that idea. So yeah, lanyard mics, headsets will probably be uncomfortable for you guys for as many hours you've been spending lately, but lanyard or lapel would work, and lanyard kind of moves with you when you look away from the lapel ones. But I just want to mention that, for some of the committees that have gone to the skeleton minutes, it's really hard to figure out what happened. And of course, some committees don't meet very regularly or don't have minutes. One in particular didn't have consistent minutes for about 2 years. And so having these liaison reports, for the members the residents to hear and on a timely basis is very important, and it's really appreciated. So if that can happen, then it doesn't have to be every single thing that had happened, but just the highlights, quick highlights, it's really appreciated. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, if there's no more hands raised. Yes, this is Howard's report. Go ahead, Howard.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. I do have 7 items, and I will try to go over them really quickly, but I attended the horse fair this last Saturday, and it was an amazing event. I want to give huge thanks to the Trails Committee for putting this together. I think it's their first post-COVID fair, and I think event at the town center. It really celebrated our town's culture and spreading the word about our equestrian culture. Mary Hupty brought her horses. We had a little mini stable out there under the oak trees along Patola Road there for petting. We had a petting zoo. We had horse rides, pony rides, carriage rides, which I had to wait a long time for too. We had the mounted patrol there. I saw Judith Haskell and Danny Dempsey also of the fire department. He lives here in town. His parents live here in town. They're well known. I learned how to lasso a big steer. There was a lot of fun. The parking lots were packed. It was an amazing day seeing all the kids play baseball, soccer, people on the performance lawn. people at the library. I mean, these are things that we're offering to the residents, and hundreds of people here on a really nice day. So just a big thanks to everyone that participated and the Trails Committee specifically for holding this event. So that's the first one. Second one is I continue to encourage council members to call me if there's any questions concerning the memos that we produced to help answer questions in detail to assist you in understanding the memos. So that's the second item. The third item, once again, we're a small staff. We're 70% of staff now due to vacancies. And as it comes to committee requests, they do take a lot of time when each committee comes up with a couple of requests. So those requests should go through the council liaisons, and that would help us out a lot during this time. Filter through requests through the council liaisons, so they can help the town staff prioritize at this moment, this interim moment. Let's see, the next item I did want to mention concerning the legal services budget, our general legal services budget. Numbers here. I understand that it's been a busy year for legal services. I mean, we've had the housing element, CEQA, litigation, staff turnover, lots of legal services, and our budget for this current fiscal year, which is July 1st of last year up to June 30th of this year, was 140,000. And if we were over that amount back in January, February already. And once again, understanding that there's a lot of things going on. So if we project forward concerning the current bills right now and a transitional period, we're projected to be at $406,000 in legal services. That is, just put in perspective, that's $266,000 over our current budget. So that's I just wanted to bring that to light to the council that we're gonna have to figure out budget amendments, where we're gonna get the money from for ongoing services, and properly budget for next year, because even the next year's budget there are items to consider also. So I wanted to make the council aware of that. So the next item, once again, it's I want to acknowledge our staff. The vacancies now, being a small staff, I wanted to acknowledge in public, our staff has been hardworking. I want to thank them for their continued commitment and a focus on right now of just trying to get some big things done, such as the budget, trying to provide operations, permitting, use of our facilities, use of our infrastructure, our offerings to the public. Just to acknowledge our staff's work on them during this time of being shorthanded in this interim. So, thank you, and that's my report. I'm here for any questions.
Thank you, Howard. Questions for the manager?
Can we comment, or does it have to be a question?
No.
Comments, questions? No, which one?
Oh, go either one. Yeah. I'll take comments or questions, and then I'll take public comment on this.
Yeah. Horse Fair, huge success. So nice to see so many different people out. Perfect day. They couldn't have scripted it any better. And I encourage people to attend next year if you didn't have the chance. It's wonderful. And thanks, Howard, for reminding us that we are in an interim period, and we do all want to make sure that things keep running, but also have some patience and appreciation for people taking on more than their fair share. So I think that's a very appropriate comment. Thank you.
I suppose I have the question whether they're if we're 70%, at 70%, are we hiring somebody in public works? Can we be hiring in public works? Where is that? Can we help us solve this problem in some ways, or is that too set in Are we too set in our tracks to actually get people in for hiring?
What I mean, that the 70% is the overall staff, not just public.
No, but I mean, there's things that are easy to hire and things that are not, are harder to hire. Can we get some bodies to be doing some of the stuff? Like people have talked about volunteers stepping up. I think everybody's offered to help me with tech, with all these kind of, there are all these offers. Maybe we can actually put those to work somehow. But in addition, some positions are easy to hire, relatively easy to hire. Can we get that going? I mean, I'm not really necessarily asking you. I'm making a comment to maybe that's too much like discussion. I did think, it did occur to me that the legal numbers you were giving, it sounded like we really under budgeted. It wasn't last year. I mean, it wasn't, I have no memory or knowledge of that, but it seems like that was an under budget for one thing. And don't we want to have our coming with budget realistic in terms of our needs, our legal needs?
One could look at it that way. I mean, once again, the items that we had that were very significant were the housing element, CEQA, the litigation, some turnover items. We have a transition period right now between, retired, well, the resigning town
Right.
attorney and the new town attorney.
Some of
So-
those were anticipated.
Yeah. So some of those things are unanticipated. It's very hard to anticipate when we work for the housing element. That was a big deal for the town. How much legal services
Absolutely.
you're going to use. There was an unknown there. And once again, on budget, it is our best estimate at things to happen. And sometimes things happen quite differently.
Well, I think it's just.
I just
terrific.
want to add, I won't be up to speed on the exact numbers, but my understanding is, so that every year when they do the budget, they based it on previous years. Last year, when they went through the budget, we increased relative to historical, knowing that we were going through the housing element. So that was already baked
was-
in,
it
the
was baked in.
increase. We've gone, as he just described, that much over that because of the incremental housing element work, litigation, all the other things he mentioned, staff turnover. So that's the
Was
point.
it almost twice as much? Is it
Almost
Three times. It was 3 times as much.
So what I've actually asked for is looking just to, so you could get the details to look at it historical, like over 5 years, so
Yeah.
you can see, and
Oh,
it's a hockey stick.
Can imagine.
Yeah.
Well, I can't say enough about how wonderful it was to have Howard come to the horse fair. Gotta say, thank you, Howard. That was wonderful. And I could just talk for a half an hour about this. So put the timer up there and I just want to thank you, Howard. That's it.
And I also forgot, record numbers of PRAs too.
Okay. Greg, did you want to comment on?
Well, I mean, again, we're having discussion versus this question.
It was more like questions and maybe just brief comments as opposed to discussion. But
Okay, so why don't I wait for public comment and then I have one more comment. but-
all right. Okay. Rita Combs has her hand up on Zoom. Go ahead, Rita.
Hi, I just want to make a comment concerning expenses. I hope that moving forward that we code our expenses so we know, instead of thinking, oh, we had this happen and that happened, but actually code what departments or what actions they came from. If it was towards the housing element, if it was towards the safety element, if it was towards PRAs. Does anyone know what it was for last year? And being that we haven't closed the books for last year and we don't have the audits done, it makes it hard to hear this conversation when, and are we doing those things moving forward? Have we been doing those things now moving forward to correct those issues for the future? And with that type of information, we can project more of a healthy budget, or even just keep an eye on things when certain costs of certain codes areas have been overrun and see what we can do to modify that in real time instead of oops afterwards. So I really hope that moving forward that and currently that we're doing that now so that we can get a clearer picture of what the expenses are as this fiscal year is ending and moving into the next fiscal year. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I see no other hands up. Christy Corley has her hand up. Christy, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Howard, for your report. I know that you were hired 60% public works and 40% town manager. I'm wondering if it really is holding to those percentages. And maybe Mary's idea is a good one, that if you need to do more, town management issues, could we hire somebody else? Because we have hired a lot of housing people, but this is public works. This serves our safety. So I have been talking about some safety issues, those getting rid of eucalyptus trees on Alpine Road and throughout our town has to become a priority after losing somebody to death on Alpine Road. And the other one is a gate at Alpine Inn instead of 7 Rocks for exit number 2. And then these crosswalks that we need them to become safer. Those are public works issues. And I just keep bringing them up in meetings. And I think it's a great idea to hire somebody to help you if you need it. So, maybe the percentages need to change. I'm just curious on your feedback on that.
Great, thank you. Jim White's hand is up. Jim, go ahead.
I just want to make one comment. I think it's a little disingenuous to be blaming the staff on legal budget forecast when you guys were way off plan on approving the plan in January. And so, to blame the forecast on the staff, I think is just disingenuous. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Okay. I see no other hands raised. Greg, did you want to make one more comment?
Yeah, I was just going to comment. I mean, I'm looking forward to the dynamic reports in OpenGov so that we actually can track this stuff. Because obviously this next year, we're going to have a pretty tight budget. And I think we as the council need to be cognizant of the consequences of our actions and the cost of our actions. And to date, it's been hard to figure that out. I mean, you can kind of say, oh, well, yeah, look how many people are here. And you can kind of calculate the cost of a meeting. But I was talking to Cindy and it's not ready yet, but she's moving to the new dynamic reports in OpenGov, and then we'll actually be able to keep track of the actual invoice level. So we can actually see it's like, and they already do get coded. There was that question. I mean, they're already coded to housing element, et cetera, but we'll be able to watch that. And I hope that, we watch it more regularly so we don't go from 140 to a 3X in what sounds like 6 months or less. And I'm a Jim. I mean, I don't blame staff for that. I mean, that's on us on the process. But I think it'll be great for us to get some more visibility.
Well, can I comment on Jim's comment? No way was I trying to blame the staff. I was trying to understand for the future of budgeting how we make these decisions and how we're gonna. I was just merely trying to get informed. Certainly, I don't blame the staff for that.
Okay, we've commented on that enough. Thank you, Howard, for the report. We move on to, we're adjourning into closed. We will now adjourn into closed session for a conference of legal counsel on anticipated litigation. So we will be closing up the Zoom.
Mayor, if
meeting.
I could make one
Oh,
comment.
I'm sorry.
I've been very
Go ahead.
quiet this
Our town
meeting.
attorney will now comment.
Been very quiet this meeting, absorbing, but I did want to make one clarification on this agenda item that I noticed when I was reading the agenda with outgoing town attorney. It's noted as being one case. But a point of clarification, this relates to the the threat of litigation submitted by Public Safety for PV Now, Inc., which is how it was agendized on the May 9th special meeting. And that threat of litigation was attached to that agenda. And so that is the matter that the council will be meeting tonight in closed session regarding.
Yeah, thank you for updating, for making that clear. Okay, and with that, we will be, I see David Cardinal's hand is up. David, if you want to comment on the closed session now, you can.
Yeah, one comment on the closed session is that we've had all these discussions about the legal budget, but just like it's pretty obvious that you guys have had many hours at hundreds of dollars per hour on this. So I hope everyone realizes how much it's costing us, the taxpayers, to have one person through a shell corporation threaten the town with a lawsuit. I just want to make that clear. Thank you.
Thank you, David. And I see Jim's hand up. Jim, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know if this was covered earlier, but I think you need to weigh very heavily whether you're going to create a pattern of folding if anyone threatens to sue this town over something they don't like. I don't know where you stand on our legal strength of our position. But in my experience on a whole bunch of boards and have dealt with litigation, if you become a target that is going to fold, you're willing to settle, cover, potentially legal expenses. And I am concerned that if you go another path and don't show that you're willing to fight, if you think you have a serious position, even if the expected value is maybe easier to settle, I think you're inviting more and more ways where people may disagree when you have reasonable defense to your decisions and processes. So I know this may not be the best time to take a stance if we don't have our own town council, but my only 2 cents as a citizen here is I don't want you to constantly be a target if it's viewed as you're an easy target to get to fold by just even threatening that we're going to challenge a decision that we don't like. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, with no more public comment, we're going to close the meeting in closed session. Thank you, everyone in the public, and good night.